Welcome to the Lakeshore Christian Church Midweek podcast. I'm Pastor Randy Cordell. We're coming to you live from our studio at our Antioch campus here in beautiful Nashville, Tennessee. We're glad to have you joining us today. If you haven't already done so, we'd love for you to hit the subscribe button. Become a subscriber, invite others to do that as well. We come to you live at noon on Wednesdays, but then once it's posted, you can listen to it anytime after that on most popular podcast platforms. Most of the time on the podcast, we spend some time reviewing the message series that we're in here at Lakeshore and reviewing the previous message and looking ahead to the next one. But today is our 100th episode of our podcast. We're excited to celebrate episode 100, and I wanted it to be a special podcast, not just because it's the 100th one, but also because this year for Lakeshore Christian Church, we are celebrating our 50th anniversary as a church. And I was thinking about a special guest to have on for that, and I couldn't think of anybody better than the guy we have here with us today, Bob Robinson. Bob, welcome. It's good to see you today, man.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. It's happy to be here, and may I extend an early birthday wish to you.
There you go. We share a birthday pretty close to each other.
I'm 5 days older, a different generation. We had it a lot tougher in my day.
That's right. He always tells me, if you want to know what it's going to be like when you get my age, just give me a call. I love it. Well, one reason I love having Bob here, of course, a lot of reasons. One is he's a good friend, and I know we have a lot we could talk about. But the other is Bob was a young man with his family that moved here to Nashville and helped start Lakeshore Christian Church. And so he's got some memories of that time that not everybody has. And so I thought it would be great to have him share some of those memories from the early days. Now, we are going to do an official celebration on November the 17th this year. Actually, the 16th and 17th, the Saturday night and Sunday that weekend. We're going to do a Saturday night praise and remembrance time, and then on Sunday at the services, we'll be celebrating the anniversary. But all year long, we're celebrating, and the church was officially incorporated on November the 20th, 1974, according to the documents of incorporation. So I know there was work going on before that, but that was when the official incorporation happened. So, Bob, I know your family was a big part of that. You were just, being my age, you were very young when this happened. But tell me about your family, when you moved here, and then those early days and processes of how it came about that you and your family connected with other families to help start the church.
Sure, I'd be glad to. So I moved to Nashville in high school when I was 15 years old, and we actually went to Christian church out by Harding Mall.
Yeah, Welch Road, right?
Welch Road, that's right. Yeah. And we find people out there. We were living out here in the Priest Lake area, and we thought, or my parents did, and some other families thought it would be beneficial to have a church closer to where we lived, but also to extend the Christian church out into this area as well. Yeah. So I was 17 years old when that started. I have my own memories. I don't have the thoughts of my parents and the others and their concerns or jubilations, I guess, at that time. But I think I picked up on a little of it. So we decided that how's this going to happen? And obviously the natural choice was to meet in somebody's home to start with. If you only have 2 or 3 families, you can accommodate that. So we decided to meet in the home of the Krajewskis, Tad and Lynn, who lived out in the Priest Lake area. They had a 2-story home, I believe, and their downstairs den, we decided that was going to be the church.
The church, the meeting place for the church.
That's exactly right. Yeah. We needed to get some supplies to begin with. We needed to get some folding chairs, and the Kmart in Madison on Gallatin Road had a sale on folding chairs. Limit 4 to a customer. We needed 40, and they would not let us buy 40 at once, but they said if we came in 10 times, so we bought 4 chairs, went out,
10 times,
came in. And then later on a Saturday afternoon, I think there used to be a Steinway store downtown on Church Street, and we found a used upright piano. Got a pickup truck and put the piano in the back, and I can remember sitting in the back of the pickup truck holding in a place while I believe Lynn Krajewski played the piano all the way back to her house.
I love it. I love it.
So that was the excitement of that beginning day.
Yeah. So many churches over the years have started that way. First of all, with a group meeting in homes. And as I understand it, they met maybe on Sunday mornings at that home, but then they also would have like a Wednesday night meeting at another home and Sunday night meeting at a different home, and of the families that were coming at that time.
That's true, and I think it built some excitement there.
Yeah.
I believe we may have had 17 people that first Sunday, and probably 10 of them were teenagers. My brother and sisters and their friends, and it seemed like it was the teenagers that really started propelling the excitement of the beginning. And so moving around to different homes lent an air of originality, I think.
Yeah, I think that's great. It's like you started with your own built-in youth group already because of the age of the families and the age of the kids and the families.
That's right, yeah.
That's great. That adds a lot of excitement. And what happens with teenagers, if they're able to be involved in something like that, the families have them as a part of it. They tell friends. They invite their friends to come for activities and programs and things like that you're doing. And, man, that just gets the word out a lot faster than you could do it without teenagers being involved.
Many of our early families, at least the parents, came because of their teenage children.
Yeah. Yeah, you still see that a lot today. If you can reach the kids through different things you're doing, it brings the family a lot of times. It really does. Well, I know that as it began to grow a little bit, of course, meeting in homes is a great way to start. But if you get enough people, eventually you got to try to look for other options too for future growth and development. And like a lot of churches too, this is another step I understand they took, and that was they secured an elementary school in the area that they could meet in.
That's right. At Lakeview Elementary School, just right around the corner there. As I recall, I maybe need to be corrected on it, but I believe Lakeshore Christian Church was the first church to be able to meet into a metro school building, that resolutions were passed to allow that to happen. Prior to that, I don't think churches were able to meet in public schools. Yeah. So we were able to set up our sign on school property on Sundays morning and take it down after the service on Sunday night. Once again, we needed to set up in their cafeteria 100 so chairs.
Yeah.
And
portable church.
It was once again an exciting and a heady time. Yeah.
Yeah. It's you have to remember, going back to that time, this was kind of cutting edge. There weren't a lot of churches or schools doing that at that point. And so to step out and for Metro schools to allow that to happen, for Metro to allow it to happen, and for the leaders there to have the vision to do that, that was bold at the time. And it takes some courageous people with willingness to step out and take some risk to really start a church and get it going like that. And so I'm so thankful for those founding members that had the vision for that. And again, for Metro allowing them to meet in a school. Now, to go full circle, you know this, but when we sold the building, we'll get to that building in a minute, sold the first building that the church had and moved into the building we're at in the Antioch campus now, we had to meet in a school again. So we went full circle back to doing portable church in a cafeteria at a school, a different elementary school at the time, Thomas Edison Elementary, but we got to redo that process.
I'd like to think of it as a spiraling up rather than just a circle.
There you go. Spiraling up is a good way to look at it. Well, after meeting in the school for a little while, I know that part of what was happening was you had to have someone that came in and did the preaching and teaching as you got more established as a church. And I believe, is it L.D. Campbell that was maybe the first one that you can remember?
No,
or somebody before that, yeah?
No, L.D. actually was our pastor in Roanoke who moved to Florence.
Well, I remember you talking about it.
Kentucky, who
yeah.
I think stayed in contact with us and was a valuable resource in how to start churches.
There you go.
So actually, I want to back up just a little bit. At the home, we were meeting in one of our, we would get, I guess maybe fourth year theology students from seminary there at Johnson City and whatnot to come on weekends. But we also had Owen Crouch.
Right, yes.
He was a professor of Greek and an interesting man. And I can remember one of my teenage friends who was kind of new to the service. When Owen would read from the Bible, he would have a little pause every now and then. And my friend afterwards said, I don't think he reads very well. I said, well, you need to go up and look at his Bible. He was a professor of Greek, and he would have a Greek Bible, and he would just translate from it into English. And
man, that's impressive. Oh man.
Yeah. So we had in the school, Danny Thurston, if I can recall, was probably our first. Yeah, long term.
I see that in the summer of '76. I happened to pull that up. That Danny Thurston was the first full-time minister of the church, paid minister of the church there. Yeah.
We had, you kind of scrounge around the gutters for who you can find.
That's how I ended up here. So
you need work, boy.
Yeah.
So we had several excellent people who stepped in and filled that role until we got Danny.
Yeah, Johnson Bible College, now Johnson University, played a big role in supplying preachers a lot of times for churches in the area that were getting started and needing some help. And it gave great experience to their students, too, and their professors that wanted to get out and preach some. It was good for them, too.
Right.
So, yeah. Well, I know I didn't know Danny Thurston, but I remember the name from the records there. That was in '76 that he came. And as you began to grow, I see here, too, that part of what began to happen is you began to look for a more permanent place then to meet. And the leaders found some land in the area, in the Priest Lake area, and were able to do a bond issue, I guess. They bought I think they bought the land first and did a bond issue to build the first building there.
That's right. I can remember some of the early families and those who wanted to participate scouring the area for available land. There was a lot of tracts available. One was actually on Smith Springs, up on a hillside where some condos are built now. But we got fortunate enough to find, I believe it may have been 5 acres.
Yeah, I think it was right at 6.
6 acres there off of Anderson Road, and it was just a perfect God-selected site, I believe, for us. Yes,
it was, and that's part of how it ended up with the name. Already, I'm sure they were already thinking of this. The name that it ended up with, because it was so close to Percy Priest Lake there on Anderson Road, near the intersection of Anderson and Smith Springs Road. The building is still there on that property that they built on that property, and now is a Baptist church that was sold to them when we relocated to the Antioch campus here. But it was a nice little. When you look around the country, you can find a lot of buildings. First church buildings that are that L-shaped model like that. That was a pretty standard model that a lot of churches used.
It was cheap to build.
Right. That was a big part. Yeah.
Easy to maintain. And as different ages go by, different traditions spring up, and that's what people associated what a church should look like, I guess.
I think so. Yeah, I can remember back, and we'll catch up to this a little bit, but back in 1990 when I first came to talk to the guys here about possibly coming to be the pastor here, that was the building you were in, and it was still that same L-shaped building, and had the front had like a stained glass section there in the front. And then it had the steeple, of course, on the top, and
I believe that was plexiglass.
It was plexiglass. It wasn't the high end stained glass. Yeah, but it had that look to it. And I can remember the first time I went there, the address was Antioch, yet they told me they were Nashville. So when I first talked to them on the phone, I started looking on the map for Antioch because I thought it must be some little town out in the middle of nowhere. I'd never heard of Antioch, but it is part of Metro Nashville. And it took me a while to make that connection to see exactly where it was, because it didn't show up on the map I looked at first. It didn't even list Antioch there.
One side of Smith Springs, 37217 Nashville.
Right.
37013 Antioch, this side.
I know, because I live, we still live over on Clear Lake Drive, and not far, we're a Nashville address at our house, and not far from us across a couple of streets there, it's already an Antioch address. So, but it's all part of Metro Nashville, the way Nashville is organized as a metro government. And Antioch is just a zip code within the Metro Nashville. But it was a community kind of for a long time. When this was first happening, it was a newly developing community. There wasn't a lot out here, really, at that point.
When we started the church, obviously this mall area was not here. The intersection at Bell Road and Murfreesboro Road was a stop sign on Bell Road.
Wow.
And that was it.
Yeah. It's kind of almost like out in the country, but not too far out.
Had a stoplight on Donaldson Pike, and the next stoplight was Smyrna.
Wow. It has changed just a little bit over the years. It's grown tremendously. The area has much more populated. A lot of stuff has been built and still being built. This is still a fast-growing area out here. Well, I know when they purchased property, they had the bond issue and had to get out and sell the bonds and get the building built. And you were telling me an interesting story, too, about some of the efforts to sell the bonds there with maybe a teenager that had a connection that helped out with that.
Yeah, one of our good teenage friends, I believe, worked at O'Charlie's, and O'Charlie's being, at that time, was a new startup, I believe, based in Nashville. Yeah. And so he just took the prospectus with him and went to the owners of O'Charlie's and said, this is what we're doing. Would you like to help out?
Wow.
And they were gracious enough to do so. And we all, to the last person, stepped up at that time out on faith. We reached out into pockets that we didn't know how we were going to fill to pay these bonds, or we borrowed money actually to buy the bonds. And it was a great test of faith for sure.
Absolutely. If you've ever been involved in planning a church, you know this, but if you haven't, it's an effort where everybody that's really committed to this and really wanting it to happen has to have a willingness to say, I'll step out and take some risk here. I'll step out in faith to help make this happen. And I know your family and other families have done that and made it possible. And I tell people all the time, and we really realize it as pastors, we stand on the shoulders of everybody that came before us. All of us do. In some way, in all of life, we do that. People that laid that groundwork and took those risks and started the things that we are still building on today. I really have a great appreciation for those people that were willing to do that, and those families that stepped out in that way. Many of them have moved away. Some have died since then, but we're still standing on their shoulders. And God's building His kingdom through the foundation that they laid. It's just great to see all that God's doing there.
Yes, no matter how many plans we had, we always had backup plan M and N and O because you'd go through the first half of the alphabet pretty quickly.
Right.
When we were meeting in homes, when it came time for baptisms, we reached out to local churches, and of course they were more than willing to open their doors for us to have that. We went down to the lake several times.
Yeah.
Sometimes in February.
You remember those really well.
You were fortunate if you became a Christian in June.
There you go.
We baptized people in the pools of housing, people's houses or condo units. It was always kind of like the Ethiopian in Philip. It's here's water, why not now?
Why not now? Yeah, there you go.
And we said no reason why not. So wherever it was an opportune time.
Yeah,
that's what we did.
I love it. And And that's what the early church did. Like you said, Philip and the Ethiopian eunuch. I mean, you see that example over and over again. When somebody made that decision, they just went and found the water they could use to baptize the person, and it's exciting. We still, I know just this past week we celebrated a baptism of a young lady in our high school group that was at a CIY conference, and they just had a tub they filled up with water, or like a one you'd find on a farm. They just filled it up with water, baptized her in that. It's just wherever there's enough water, that's what you do.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Well, I love that the heart was for also the Restoration Movement Christian Church. You really wanted that presence. The families wanted that presence to be in this community. We certainly fellowship with and cooperate with other churches on a lot of things, but I'm totally sold out on the vision of the Restoration Movement to be Christians only, to have the Bible only as our rule of authority. And they were committed to that. They have stuck with that. The leadership has been very consistent with that. And I'm honored to be able to preach at a church like that, because I know my authority is not in me or my abilities or my training. It's in Scripture. And I can see throughout the history of the church that dedication, that commitment to God's Word. And God honors that. And God has honored that at Lakeshore, and has brought so many people to come to know and follow Jesus through the foundation that was laid there with those early days.
Yes, I think the vision of the Restoration Movement, the Christian church, we're in heady political times, and back when the Christian church in the early frontier days was getting its feet on the ground, there was a lot of religious controversy and schisms at that time, and the way to bring people together was, hey, brothers, sisters, that's what we are.
Yeah.
And we can live in this family and have divergent views on our opinions.
Right.
Here's the things we agree on, and that's enough.
Yeah. They've done such a good job with that throughout the years, and part of that allowed them to do a couple of things. Even in the early years of the church, there was a group that lived out in the Mount Juliet area, and with the blessings of the local congregation at Lakeshore, they went out and planted another church over in the Mount Juliet area as well. Yeah.
You just, that's how you grow, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you have to remember they were first called Christians in Antioch. So.
That's right. I bring that up all the time. At every new members fellowship we have here, when I'm giving them the history of the church, I always bring up that they were first called Christians in Antioch. It was a different Antioch. It was in Europe, but still, yeah, that's great. But yeah, it was. It takes, again, a heart for the church beyond just your local congregation, to say we'll send some people out, we'll give our blessing and support to them going out and planting another church too, because they weren't that large even at that time to send some people out to plant another church.
It was, it took a dent out of our congregation and finances, but it was the right thing to do. And even at that early time, a portion of our budget always was dedicated to things outside of our church, our local congregation, in missions, overseas and local.
Yeah. One of the guys that came on as a pastor, I think it was in, trying to remember the year he came, Vernon Eaton. I think in 77. Yeah, I see it here now, 1977. He was hired by the church, and he came with a lot of great experience. In fact, when he left Lakeshore after being here 6 or 7 years or so, he went to be a professor at Mid-South, and then later at Johnson University, he became a professor there and had great impact in the kingdom. They went on the mission field in England for a while as well as a part of their ministry. But Vernon, I think during that time probably had the longest tenure as the minister here. And had great impact, and he was a great teaching pastor.
He was. He was a good friend. He's gone now.
Yeah.
And he did a lot. Little anecdote on Vernon. At that early time, to have a full-time pastor, we could only afford so much.
Right.
And he knew that, and he had, I don't know, 2, 3 girls. I don't recall. And so he had a family to support that probably was not going to be able to be supported on what we could offer. And at that time, my family still owns the bakery. Vernon said, "Can I supplement my income by working at the bakery?"
Wow, yeah.
And we said, "Okay." And he lived off of Anderson Road there, and one winter it snowed really about 2 feet.
Wow.
He couldn't get his car out, and he walked to the bakery there.
Oh my goodness, that's up on Murfreesboro Road there. Yeah,
Yeah,
a pretty good
Homestyle
walk.
Bakery commercial.
There you go. Well, we do want to plug Homestyle Bakery. That's part of the family heritage here with the early years of the church and all. And still, your daughter and her husband are still managing the bakery. They are doing a great job with it. It is now, as I understand it, the oldest bakery still in operation here in Nashville now. Yeah.
I think that's maybe true. Yes.
That's great.
Proud to be.
Yeah. Doing a great job with that. But they have supported the church through a lot of people. I'll just put in another plug here. A lot of people through the years have come to Lakeshore through the bakery, and them hiring them as employees and working with them as customers and inviting them to come. And so many people have ended up coming to Lakeshore through that.
Well, that's fellowship, friendship, evangelism, isn't it?
It is.
Standing on a street corner may have a role, but eating in somebody's home and letting them see what your life is all about is the greatest tool.
It really is. I love that so many Christians don't quite catch that God's using them as an ambassador wherever they go, wherever they work, wherever they go to school or whatever it is. If they represent Jesus well, it can just help grow the kingdom in so many great ways. So
That's right.
I'm thankful for over the years, and the bakery's still doing that, and they still support the church and donate goodies for different things that we're doing, nice dessert treats and things like that for so many of our events and activities, and they do that for the whole community, not just for Lakeshore, and have had a huge impact and continue to do that even now. Well, with Vernon and Denny Eaton being here for that long, I know that they had a great impact. And one of the things I've heard more about Vernon, and I got to meet him before he passed, him and Denny, and spend some time with them, was they just had a real heart for people. They just loved people and were really, he had a strong pastoral gift, I think, and was close to a lot of the people here. And I know when he left it was hard, but he was leaving to do some more good stuff, and that made it a little easier. But it makes it challenging when you have a minister that you love and that's been here that long to go on and do something else, and you got to bring somebody else in. And I know there were several different ones that have come in since that time. And another minister that came a little bit later on was Mike Southards, and Mike was here just a short time when he decided that he had a theological difference of some kind, that he wanted to branch out and do a different kind of church. And again, it was great on the part of Lakeshore, even though there was a disagreement there and some division over what was going to happen. There was a willingness to still maintain a good relationship and friendship, and send him out on a good note to go do what he felt he needed to do at that time. And I know that I got to meet Mike even after I came here and talk with him a little bit, and he appreciated the kindness that he was shown even in what could have been a divisive situation there.
It's one of the worst things, maybe the worst things that could happen to a church, is to have bitterness grow among the ranks. And probably the strongest condemnation in the scriptures is backbiting and speaking ill of somebody else. So I was glad that we were able to negotiate through those waters, to navigate that, and I'm happy for the fellowship that they started, and wish them continued success as well.
Absolutely. Again, that just speaks highly of the character, I think, of the leadership here at Lakeshore at the time, that they could maneuver through that without it being a very damaging thing to the church overall, not just Lakeshore, but to the reputation of the church and the community.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I know after that time, and we only have so much time on the podcast, but I want to talk a little bit more about just moving forward a little more. When I got a call from some of the leaders here at Lakeshore about possibly coming to visit and talk about maybe moving here to be the minister at Lakeshore, the church had been without really a full-time paid minister for a little while, about a year, I think, close to a year. Other people had been filling in during that time, and I believe Ed Evans was the one that was filling in most often during that time. Is that right?
Yes, yeah. Absolutely. He did a great job for us.
Yeah. I think even before that, maybe Bob Gray had been here for a short time as well.
Bob Gray was a former pastor, and I forget the circumstances that brought he and his family to Nashville, and when the opportunity came, he was willing to step up and leave his job for the uncertainty of being a pastor of a small church.
Yeah, there you go. I can remember when they called me, and I don't remember if it was you or somebody else that called me first, because you were serving in a leadership role here at the time too, and asked if I'd be willing to come and meet with the leadership team about possibly coming here. I always say, coincidentally, I know it was God at work, but coincidentally, I had a brother that was in the military at Fort Campbell, and it was close to Thanksgiving when I got the call, and we had already planned a trip to come up to Fort Campbell to see my brother's family there. And they called and said, could I meet here with the leadership team? And I said, I just happen to be coming through that area anyway. So I will set up a time while we're in town at Fort Campbell there, which is not too far north of us here. And it just worked out that I could meet during that time. My wife was funny because we were really praying about, we felt like we needed to move and we're looking for another opportunity to serve. And after I met with the guys here, and honestly, every church has challenges and struggles. And I told Bob earlier, one of the things they told me at the first meeting was, we have put some money back. We've got $20,000 in the bank. And they were talking about the salary they were going to pay me, was about, about that and said, so we got it covered for 1 year. And I thought, well, that sounds great. They got it at least covered for 1 year, but I better do some good work in that year to help grow and bring some more in. But when I got to my brother's house after the meeting, Sue Ann was waiting on me there, and she was praying the whole time. And she said, when I walked in, she could tell I felt like God wanted us to come here. That she could see it on my face. She could just see that I was really convinced God was saying, there is a really good opportunity here. The church was facing challenges like every church, but the potential of what God could do with a core group that was committed to this work, I could sense that. The Holy Spirit was prompting me already to say, yeah, we need to do this. And it was something I just, as soon as I got back to talk to Sue Ann, she said, we're moving to Nashville, aren't we? I said, well, we were living in Georgia at the time. I said, I think we are, if that's what the congregation there decides they want to do.
Well, I'm glad that worked out that way, because we were going to pick the first person who said yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, not really.
No,
we were fervently praying just as hard for the right person.
Yeah.
And it was a divine appointment for sure.
Absolutely. We went back to Georgia and prayed about it, and the church leaders here went through the process you have to go through to bring in another minister here. And I can remember in March of 1991, that first Sunday in March is when I preached my first sermon at Lakeshore. And it was in that building still on Anderson Road, still that little L-shaped building. And I can remember, you remember this guy. I know he was a friend of ours. My first baptism here, I can remember, was Tommy Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Tommy's still in the area. I still see Tommy around a good bit. Coach Wilson, he coached a lot. Yeah,
Pearl Cone.
Yeah, but I can remember when I baptized Tommy. I wasn't used to this baptistry yet that was in the building there, but I overfilled the baptistry. I didn't realize I had filled it up too much. And when I baptized Tommy, the water just overflowed over the top out into the little choir loft area there in front of it. So,
yeah. Two other choir members were baptized.
That's right. Well, they got at least sprinkled. I don't know that we got them immersed. Yeah, it was good. And I can remember, too, some funny things in that building early on. Talked about your family. Roger Clapp married your sister, Julie. Mm-hmm. Roger was running the sound. We had just a little home stereo set up for the sound there. And he was running the sound for our first Christmas Eve service, I remember, in that auditorium. since I got there, the first Christmas Eve service that we were having. And he had this, I think it was a cassette tape at the time that he was playing that he had brought to use for the music to lead into the service, and thinking it was just all good Christian Christmas songs on there and everything. And I can remember some of the songs that started playing weren't necessarily appropriate for the candlelight service. And Roger ran up, and you had to get under the pulpit there, so it was mounted under there, and take out the tape and hurriedly try to find something else to play there.
Well, it was our first experience in contemporary music.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we went through all the stages that you do with transition and change that you go through with the growth of a church. And I can say this, both Bob and the other leaders at the time, change is always hard, and there's always resistance. And the commitment that the leaders had to simply want to be a church that reached lost people is what really drew me. And I think the prompting of the Spirit told me that was the heart of the people that were here and the leaders that were here. Is we know it's hard, and we're going to go through challenges, and change is going to be hard, but we want to reach lost people. That's why we were brought to this community. That's why the church started in this community. We want to reach this community for Christ. And so they were willing to be open to, not everything we tried worked well, but they were open to trying things, to doing things that would reach lost people.
Yeah. My mother, father, you and I grew up with the traditional hymns. From 100, maybe 70 years ago now,
right?
Most of those, and my mother, although she may have preferred that, when it came time to make the transition into more contemporary music, she says, "Well, what's going to grow the church the best?"
Yeah,
and she was able to forego her own desires for the betterment of the kingdom.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I honor her for that.
And she was so sweet about it, because I knew not everything we were doing was her preference. It wasn't all my preference at the time either all the time. I had grown up with other things that were different. But I knew it was something God was using to reach the people that we were trying to reach in the generation then. And so we had to be willing to try some of those things. And not just the music. There were other things. We ended up building onto that building. And the first building we added was a metal gym type building. And you may remember this. Our plan was just to use that more for fellowship hall and kitchen and all that stuff for meals and all. But we had grown so much by the time we got it built that we moved our worship services into that metal building.
And it was almost too small.
Yeah.
From day one.
I love it. Yeah, it was great.
We never planned what God plans.
We really didn't even design it to be used that way. And so it took some creative work to use it for the auditorium then for the worship services and to be able to grow it that way. But, it's one of those things where we had basketball goals in there, and it had a concrete floor painted for a basketball court. But you set up chairs, and we had a stage in the corner, and we did services in there, and God used it.
And my mother was happy that it had very tall ceilings so that she could get her 25-foot Christmas tree in there.
That's right.
With 10,000 lights.
She was always amazing with Christmas decorations. That was one of the things because they live just down the street from us there where we live. And I always joke that when they put up their decorations at that house, the lights at our house would dim every time they turned them on. She went all out.
They had opened the floodgates at the TVA dams.
That's right. Oh, man. Some great memories there. And, of course, we continue to grow on that property. We expanded that building 3 times, as a matter of fact. Had a portable that we brought in to give us additional space. We expanded the parking lot several times over the years. This is starting from 91 and moving forward there. And it reached a point where we were in a neighborhood at that property. And even though it was 6 acres, we maxed it out at a certain point and had to start looking to allow more growth. We had to make a move. And that was the commitment we had. We wanted to keep reaching as many people as we could reach, and that's what the leadership wanted. So we started looking for another place that we could go to. And again, every change is hard. That was the first thing, the early members sacrificed. They built that building, bought that land, built that building. But the leadership was committed. Now, we brought in some church growth experts. You may remember this.
Yes.
they gave us the recommendation that we relocate further away from Nashville, that we get out a little further away from Antioch in order to grow the church. But I can remember it wasn't just me. It was the whole leadership said, God called us to Antioch. He called us to this community. We want to find another place here in this area and still be able to grow the kingdom here. And I love that because Antioch was transitioning at the time. A big part of the transition was racial transition that was happening. It was becoming much more racially diverse. And that's what a lot of churches decide at that time to kind of run from that. Because it is easier to reach people who look like you and believe what you believe and have lifestyles like you have. It's easier more comfortable, I should say, to reach that community. But our leadership was committed to reaching everybody, whoever they were in the community. And so I can remember we had one African-American family that was already coming here when I came, and Art Laird and his wife, Jo. What a great commitment they made when they decided to come visit Lakeshore and then decided to be part of it. And I want to say for your family, one of the things Art and Jo have told me over and over again is the first Sunday they visited, they sat in that parking lot and prayed because they knew it was a white church, you could say, when they came the first time. And they prayed about what's going to happen, when we walk in there and all of that. And it was a member of your family, I believe it was Julie.
One of my sisters.
Yes. One of your sisters. Yeah. It might have been Julie, it might have been Lori, but right. I think maybe Julie. They said they were the first person that talked to them and when they got out of the car and were coming in and just made it so easy and welcoming for them when they first came in. Just the way they were greeted by members of your family. Man, that speaks volumes, doesn't it, on the impact. And Art and Jo ended up being such a vital, intricate part of the church. And later on, one of our elders for years, he's now elder emeritus. Yes. He's battling Parkinson's disease now and couldn't continue functioning like he had wanted to. But we made him an elder emeritus. But Art and Jo have had such impact too. And it kind of opened the door. It laid the foundation for the continuing effort just to reach whoever was in the community, regardless of race or ethnicity or anything like that. And today, Lakeshore has over 25 countries of origin represented in our church family, races and ethnicities all blended together. But that was the beginning of it.
Yeah, I think it may still be true that the most segregated time in America is Sunday morning.
Yeah.
And it's nice to see Lakeshore cast a wide net and open arms to the community. And I think it does reflect the diversity that we have out here, and we're so much better for it.
Absolutely. I've said all along as a pastor that wherever your church congregation is located, it should look like the community that it's in. Right? If you're reaching the lost people in your area, it's going to look like your area. Not every church is going to be that diverse because the community that they're in is not that diverse. But Lakeshore should look like that because that's the community that we're in. So I appreciate the leadership's commitment to that. We ended up relocating. Like I said, we had to be in a school for a year. We bought another property that had been a big box retail store. A lot of you won't even remember Media Play, but Media Play was like an old school Best Buy kind of.
Yeah.
And this building had been a Media Play where our Antioch campus is now. The section that we're in was a Media Play store. And we were looking for a building to relocate to that was more visible in the Antioch community, had more of a presence in the Antioch community. I think it was one of our youth pastors. I made a mistake of letting them go out and look for property. And they came back and said, "Oh, there's this big store that's for sale down there." And I said, "Okay, we'll take a look at it." We didn't think we could afford it at first until the owner said, "Well, you also inherit. There's a bank ATM in the parking lot that pays a little bit of a lease. There's a restaurant on one end that pays some lease. There is a pet store on the other end that was paying some lease. So when you put all that together with that income with what the church had, it made it possible for us to purchase the building. Now, we didn't purchase it right at first. They had to come down on the price a lot. There was a long time of negotiation, and they got it out of the hands of a real estate agent. You may remember this because you were part of this process. So we ended up talking to the individual that owned it, who lived out in California, and was unloading some property here in Nashville that he owned. His name was Moses. Did you remember that? Moses Lerner.
Yeah, I do now. Yeah. I recall it now. Yeah.
Moses led us to the promised land here. So, but now we were able to buy it from Moses, and but it had to be built out, remodeled. And a part of what had to happen there is we had to sell our other property. And there was a Baptist church in the area, Priest Lake Community Baptist Church, that was outgrowing the smaller building that they were in. They were right down the street on Anderson Road from us a little ways. And we needed to sell our property, and I knew they were outgrowing where they were. And I called up a Reverend Harold Frelix, was the pastor there. I called him up and I said, Pastor Frelix, would you guys be interested in this building? And he said, we would. And I said, well, it's going to have to be at a certain price for us to do the deal we're looking at. We've got to get this much out of this property to be able to buy the other property. And so he came down and talked with me and looked at it, and we all prayed together about it. And they came back and said, yeah, we'll do it at that price. And it made it possible for us to do it, except that in order for them to do it, they had to move in right away, which meant that we were going to have a time of building out this property to have to meet somewhere else. And so we came to that full circle moment where we had to go back to meeting in a school. We were so thankful that we had a school in the area, an elementary school again, that said, we'll let you meet here. Metro Schools allowed it again. And we did multiple services. We did 2 services on Sunday mornings, portable church every weekend, setting up and taking down for a year at the elementary school there, Thomas Edison Elementary School. The principal there was so kind to us. He was a pastor too, and was very cooperative with us. We even ended up having a family, the guy that was a custodian there that was letting us in and out and everything. He and his family started coming too. We started reaching people even while we were. Some of the church growth experts said, Randy, you're going to lose about half your congregation if you move them out of a permanent building back into a school while you're waiting to get into another one. We didn't even, not only did we not lose people, we grew during the time we were at the school there. And God just blessed it. And again, it took great vision on the part of the leadership to say, we're willing to take a risk like that, to move into a big box retail store building. Now, other churches had done that, but it wasn't the most common thing even then to do that.
That's right.
But I appreciated the vision that you guys had, was saying, yeah, that's a step that we believe could help us grow the kingdom.
Well, it's a good thing Media Play couldn't sell enough 8-track tapes.
That's right. They had the big old tube TVs and 8-track tapes and all that stuff. Yeah. It was an interesting time for sure, and it involved some risk. And part of the risk you have to realize that we all experienced, even after moving into this building, building it out and all, was the recession hit right when we did that. And we were thinking, how are we going to get through this, right? Mm-hmm. But God gave us enough growth that not only did we not lose everything, we were able to not have to lay anybody off, not have to make any cuts of staff or anything like that, and survive through that recession, to hold on to everything and keep it going, because God just kept bringing us new people that added to the numbers and the strength financially we needed to have. Yeah.
And we ate a lot of Chinese food.
We did. We had what happened was there was a Chinese restaurant on one end of the building, so it was right there for us all the time. Man, that was some risky times, but some times of great growth of our faith and growth of the kingdom. So many people have been brought to Christ through Lakeshore Christian Church. We're going to have to kind of wrap up our time here. I know, let's say, we better wrap it up pretty soon. But I just wanted to thank you and your family again on the podcast here, because you were such a vital part of doing that. I know for a while you were away at medical school, then came back again and continued to serve at Lakeshore. And your daughter Sarah and her family still very much actively involved here, and welcome so many new people in through the bakery and other influence they have in the community to Lakeshore as well. And so the legacy of your family and the other families that helped start this, it's going strong.
We'll take a little credit for the beginning, but the majority of it is, as you said, those whose shoulders we're continuing to stand on.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of unnamed people who sacrificed a whole lot in their lives for this mission, and I'm thankful to them and thankful to you that you did say yes.
Yeah. Well, it was, I haven't made all smart decisions in my life, but I can say that's one of the smartest ones for sure. And it was just by the grace of God that all of that lined up, and God connecting the dots there for sure. And I'm so thankful that he did. Well, there's a lot more to come for Lakeshore Christian Church should Jesus delay his coming back very much longer. We don't know when that's going to happen, but in the time that he gives us, the legacy that was created through those first families taking those steps of faith continues to reach people. I personally, Bob, have been able to baptize over 1,200 people in the time that I've been here. But I'm not the only one that's been baptizing. There have been other people baptizing people too and bringing people to Christ. We've sent out people in the ministry out of our church. And we have, I've been here 33 years, and we were counting the other day. We've got over 30 people who've gone out from our church that are serving in other churches around the country and around the world. So that's happened. We've helped plant 3 other churches here in the U.S. and 1 in Ecuador during that time as well. So God is just multiplying what those first founding families were willing to step out and start. He's just keeps multiplying the impact and the effort of that. We won't know the total of the impact until we get to heaven, and there are going to be people who come up to you and come up to me and say, hey, I came to know Jesus because of the shoulders we stand on even today, starting that church, getting that ministry going there at Lakeshore.
It'll be it's a wonderful life script for each of us, won't it?
It will. I'm looking forward to it big time. Well, Bob, thank you again for being here.
Thank you.
I've enjoyed this time together. We could, I know, talk for many more hours, I'm sure, and tell a lot of great stories. We won't tell stories on each other on this podcast. I know we could, but please refrain from that right now. But again, thank you. I've got a gift I want to give you before you go.
Oh, thank you.
We had these shirts made up for our 50th anniversary. So I'll show it to the camera here. I'm wearing one too. 50th anniversary for Lakeshore Christian Church, 1974 to 2024. I wanted to give you that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.
God bless you, man. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today for our podcast here. We hope you'll join us in person on Sundays here at Lakeshore. We have services at the Antioch campus at 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. We have services at the Smyrna campus at 10 a.m. on Sunday mornings. And if you can't be here in person, we live stream the service at 9 a.m. on Sunday mornings. And then once it's posted, you can listen to it anytime after that. Please join us when you can as we continue to connect, grow, and serve here at Lakeshore Christian Church.